All right, hi everybody. Professor Mike Kennedy here. Really excited to be talking about some finance today. If you take one thing away from this presentation, please let it be that you promise me that you will not buy a Tesla with a credit card. If I've done at least that, I think we're ahead. I'm going to talk basic finance today, give you some tips and tricks that hopefully will make your journey at Acadia and beyond a little bit more financially responsible. So just a quick warning, this webinar does feature a lot of cheesy jokes, so your discretion is advised. If you're lactose intolerant, just be careful because some of these jokes are legendary. Okay, let's do it here. So game plan, going to be talking about three kind of big areas here. The first one is budgeting and how we do basic financial goal setting. Also going to spend a little bit of time talking about credit cards, how they work, and what to be aware of when and when not to use them. And I'll round out things by talking a little bit about some of the financial resources we have available for you at Acadia, from scholarships and bursaries through to how Acadia can help as you try to find a job while a student and offset maybe some of the costs of your tuition and to make a few bucks outside of the classroom. And toward the end of the presentation, happy to open up the floor to any questions that you have, and also encouraging you, if you want to, throughout the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A function. I'll be monitoring that from my trusty laptop, which I've got beside me here. So keep the questions coming. Feel free to fire them away in real time. Let's try to have a little bit of fun today. I know we're talking about finance, but we're gonna try to have fun anyway. So here we go, and I'll get you off and ready to join Kevin Duffy and the team from athletics for a workout in an hour from now. So welcome your comments. Let's get to it here. So firstly, quickly, a little bit about me. My name is Mike Kennedy. I'm a Acadia graduate, Acadia alumni, proud class of 2005. Lived in Eaton House and Chase Court while I was at Acadia. Absolutely love the place. Feel free, if you want to follow what I'm kind of eating on a regular basis or get any of my adventures, at Mike from East to West on Instagram. My favorite item to budget for is bike trips. A couple of years ago, I cycled across Canada, and that took a bunch of logistical and also financial planning. So budgeting enables you to take on kind of and put a plan in place for some of the big dreams that you're working towards in your life. Feel free, I'd love to hear from you in the chat function there, the Q&A spot. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What residence are you living in? Any questions, concerns you have about finance, and we'll try to knock them off today. Firstly, I have a question to ask you. What is chromatophobia? I'll give you a few seconds here in the chat function to guess what this means. What is chromatophobia? A quick hint, it is not fear of Chromeo, like that insatiable, catchy pop tune spread and duo. Okay. Chromatophobia is actually the extreme fear of money. Yes, this is an actual thing. So the fear of everything from spending money, the fear of thinking about money, even the fear of touching money, you can refer to that as chromatophobia. And yeah, not the fear of Google Chrome, which is also a valid concern as well. So being afraid of money is entirely normal. And fear of money is one of the greatest sources of stress that folks of all ages experience. So today, hopefully, we're going to try to alleviate some of that stress, give you some of the tools you need to overcome if you are facing chromatophobia. Okay, so wanted to throw something out there. Let's throw out the elephant in the room. University is an investment and it's super expensive. So the average Canadian as of 2017 is graduating with a debt load of $26,000 by the time they're completed their university degree. I think super important to put this in context. So university is super expensive. It's an investment, but it's an investment that historically and into the future is going to pay off. So on average, by making that investment upfront out of high school, lifetime earnings of someone with a university degree are significantly higher than someone who's graduated just from high school or just from college, according to Statistics Canada. So all kinds of good data available on that. So I know it's maybe easy for me to say right now that don't worry about having a big debt load, or don't worry about kind of putting all this money into university, but trust me, it'll pay off and the numbers don't lie. Okay, so I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about budgeting. Feel free, again, to weigh in with your questions or your concerns or your ideas in the chat function. Talk a little bit about budgeting, which is essentially a financial plan for a defined period of time, basically laying out a playbook for what we're hoping to happen with our personal finances. And there are three main parts to a budget. So we're making a plan, we're setting out a path where we're predicting what our income or like the inflows of sources of cash we're going to have. We're predicting what expenses we're going to incur, or outflows of cash that are going to occur, and what's left over after we've subtracted our expenses from that income is what's either a surplus or a deficit. So we've got money coming in, we've got money going out, and hopefully we have some left over. That would be called a surplus. And if we've spent more, so we have more expenses than we have income, then that is an instance of a deficit. And deficits, as you can probably guess, are bad, and we need to be creative about how we come up with ways to fund any shortfall or deficit in cash. So lots of online tools available out there and templates out there for you to use to build a budget. This is, in a super simple example, what it would look like. So at the top of your budget, you'd have a list of all your sources of income. So maybe you've got some savings, maybe you're pulling in some resources from a student loan. That's your total income. Then you've also got expenses. I'd say this person in this theoretical example is living a pretty good life if they're spending double on our entertainment what they are on kind of tuition. And if I subtract those total expenses of $3,000 from our total income of $2,500, I've got $500 left over, or a surplus left over. Okay. So quick example, that's sort of what a budget looks like. And as you do your own, you're going to have quite a few more line items in there, but this gives you a little overview of kind of what that looks like. So why on earth would we make and keep a budget? So by tracking and making a plan for how we're going to spend and make money, it's going to help us attain life goals. So whether there's a big purchase you want to make, maybe that could be travel, could be kind of buying a house down the line, further education, or just a big purchase that you're keen on, making a budget helps put a plan in place that's going to make it more likely that we're going to achieve that particular goal. Making a budget also gives us kind of an ice bucket of reality about what constraints we have in place in our life. So if we're only making a finite amount of money, if we're only able to access a finite amount of money through loans, it's going to clearly let us know what we can and can't afford, and then prioritize around that and ensure that we're not overspending, spending money that we don't have, potentially racking up debt that I'll talk about in a little bit. Having a budget allows us to prepare for emergencies. So to look into the future and kind of make sure that we're set up for any adverse events that might be coming our way. And the budget can be like a mirror that we hold up on ourselves as we're monitoring our budget and how we're performing against it to identify bad habits that we have. So if we're looking at our bank statement every month and seeing that we're spending on average $250 a month at Subway, like I did when I was an undergraduate, kind of identifies and holds a mirror up to that and lets us clearly understand where we're spending money and where we may need to change. And by understanding and keeping a budget, there are scientific linkages to that actually helping you sleep better by proactively addressing your finances. It's something you're going to ruminate less on, worry less about, and you'll actually sleep better. So my accounting classes are great for helping people sleep because either I'll put you to sleep with the material or I'll give you tips so you're less worried and you can sleep better. So double whammy. It just as a fun fact here, so just under 50% of Canadian households use a budget to manage and maintain their finances throughout the year. But of that 50%, most actually stick with it. So only about half of a household's budget, but most who do budget are able to live within their budget. So you could say that 49% of the time, it works 93% of the time. Giving you a couple of tips here. A great resource and a great spot for getting started on a budget if you haven't already made one, which I'd highly recommend you do. If you go to scholarships.acadiau.ca, it's kind of your one-stop shop for all things scholarships, financial aid, financial literacy at Acadia. And if you were to click on, if you go to that website, the Money Matters icon, little icon with some coins there. If you were to click on that and then jump into budget calculator, we've got a great online resource available free to you where you can, through like an automated web form here, pop in your sources of income or your resources and the sources of your expenses. And then based on kind of your student status and whether you're living on or off campus, it'll automatically calculate a number of items that'll help you with your budget. So encouraging you to play around with that, just scholarships.acadiau.ca and heading on over to the budget calculator. Okay. And what we're going to do when we're making a budget, again, we want to understand really well what we're actually spending and using that to project out what our future financial needs are and how we're going to meet them. So what we want to do is understand kind of our baseline spending as a starting point. So something to get into a habit of is just to keep every receipt. So whether you're kind of heading downtown to Muddy's to buy candy on like the delicious wall of candy, hopefully for those of you who are out of self-isolation, you've had a chance to make it downtown and support some of our local businesses. But keeping a receipt every time that you do that, much easier now that we have all of that information available through like electronic banking. So to establish a baseline budget, we want to be reviewing regularly our bank and credit card statements. And if you want to monitor like over like the last 3 months and taking kind of the average of what you're spending each month, removing any kind of big one-time expenses that you have, that'll give you a kind of a baseline understanding of what you should be budgeting for kind of into the future. So if you're to look at your last 3 months expenses, what are the items that you're buying regularly and have a recurring expense of? And then using those to form the basis of kind of what your projected future expenses are as you're building your budget. And that's going to tell us how much we need to budget for. Okay. From there, we're going to want to figure out what our sources of income or resources are to cover off those budget items. Okay. So again, encouraging you to use that tool on scholarships.acadiau.ca. Or any number of other budgeting apps or spreadsheets that are available free of charge online to build out a budget for the year ahead for you. So a couple tips that I'd like to throw out there, like when you've got your budget in place, super important to get into the habit of checking your budget a regular thing. So we're talking once a month and ideally once a week. And this isn't super time consuming, but it's a great habit to get into and it's going to hold us accountable. So what I would recommend that you do is at the end of every month, set aside half an hour or an hour to just simply comb through your bank statement, your credit card statements, any bills that you're receiving, entering them into your budget spreadsheet or your budget tracker and compare how you're doing against your projected budget. So if you've set kind of a limit for yourself to spend a max of $500 a month on entertainment or like eating out, going back at the end of the month or ideally weekly and checking how you're doing compared to that budget. Are you tracking to go way over that budget? Are you coming way under? Just having a good sense of whether you're going to hit the targets that you've set out for yourself and what you can afford. What I love to do is actually just put a calendar reminder in my either Outlook or Google Calendar if you've got like an old school kind of desktop calendar. Or a handwritten calendar, pop in a recurring either weekly or monthly reminder for yourself to set aside half an hour or an hour to go through your budget and see how you're doing, to outline any red flags you might be running into. Okay. So I'm going to dive into a bunch of tips here for kind of budgeting and financial management that could help you either save money or earn more money through your student journey and then well beyond. So first regular tip to kind of get into here is pretty simple. but a lot of money slips by the wayside here by not doing this on a regular basis. So again, once a month, you're setting aside some time to check how you're doing against your budget, but also to dive into the bills that you're receiving and reviewing them in detail. Like I'm thinking cell phone bills, like your bank statements, any recurring bill you're getting. You're gonna wanna review that on a regular basis to make sure that you're spotting any mistakes or not getting overcharged. The amount of times that you look really closely at your cell phone bill, or your power bill, or even the monthly subscription fees that you have for things like Netflix or Apple TV, by reviewing your bank statement on a monthly basis for any mistakes or overcharges, you could end up saving yourself quite a bit of money. This monthly review of bills is also going to allow you to catch if there's a billing error in place that caused you to be charged like late fees or additional penalties. And then you can reach out to the company to correct it kind of before it's too late and you get hit by further penalties. So budgeting tip number one, just on a monthly basis, setting aside some time to check your bills and make sure you're only getting billed for, or charges on your bank statement are only showing up for the valid expenses that you have racked up. Okay. I'm going to give you a second here to think about this one. So a big budgeting tip is knowing your value as a customer to the company that you're dealing with. Okay. So over the course of your lifetime, you're a university student, you are going to be out-earning folks that you graduated with alongside in high school or those who went to college. So you've got more money to spend. Super important that you understand your value to the businesses and organizations that are providing you with products and services. And you can use this as a valuable piece. So what do you think is your value to a cell phone company? Feel free to pop any guesstimates there into the chat function. Okay. A little bit of a lag here, so we're gonna charge ahead. There is something that is super valuable that I wish I knew about when I was a student at Acadia, and something that I use regularly when I'm negotiating with a business who I'm going to be spending, whether it's a small or a considerable amount of money with. Okay, so hopefully I would assume that everyone here has a cell phone plan. I'm guessing that you're spending somewhere in the neighborhood of like 50 to 80 bucks a month with that cell phone plan. Here is something that's fantastic to know that you can use to your advantage throughout your lifetime of your career. It's the concept of customer lifetime value. So this is basically the amount of money that you're going to spend with a business over your entire lifetime. Okay, so if I'm signing a cell phone contract and I'm likely to stay with that cell phone company for my entire life, the value of my business is calculated by extending how much I'm going to spend with that particular cell phone company over my entire life, less whatever it cost for them to acquire me as a customer. So super simple formula here. The amount that I'm expected to spend over my lifetime, less the cost that it took that telecom company to lure me over, is equal to my customer lifetime value. And this is something that's super valuable for negotiating kind of your bargaining position. Okay. Boom. So as an example here, I've seen this a lot, whether it's with a financial institution or a telco. They are offering you up an incredible incentive to sign up with their product. If you switch over to my telecom company, I will give you 2 free movie tickets. Who says nothing's for free, right? $24, you can go see whatever the latest movie is. I just saw Tenet, which was probably the most confusing film I've ever seen. If someone can explain that to me in the chat function, I'd appreciate it big time. Okay. So I'm offering up free movie tickets if you sign up for a cell phone plan, $24 that I'll be saving you if you switch over to my cell phone company. Okay, so that'd be what we call like the cost of acquisition of a customer. That's how much it costs for them to lure you over to sign the plan. Okay, now let's put this in perspective. This is just a theoretical example. So I've got $24 worth of free movie tickets. On average, my cell phone bill is 50 bucks a month. This is maybe wishful thinking. I think I pay a bit closer to 80, but just follow my example here. So over my lifetime, I'm going to be spending 50 bucks a month on my cell phone bill. That's about 600 bucks a year. Okay. And I'm assuming that I'm going to live for 82 more years, which would put me into my hundreds, which would be pretty rad. Over my lifetime and over your lifetime, just think about this: when you're switching cell phone providers, you're going to be spending close to $50,000 on your cell phone bill alone with potentially one provider. Okay. So your business is super valuable to them over your lifetime, and important to kind of factor this in when you're negotiating and when you're determining how and why you might switch cell phone providers. Okay. Boom. So if we're looking at this from the perspective of like customer lifetime value, your lifetime of cell phone bills, so like the amount that you're expecting to spend, $50,000 or so, less the $24 for the free movie tickets that it costed to acquire you, your customer lifetime value, kind of when we net it out, is close to $50,000. That equals the telecom company winning. So factor this in when you're negotiating contracts. Ask for free stuff, ask for free phones, ask for the best plan that's available. Know your value. So encouraging to use this when you're negotiating kind of with banks, whether it's, or with a cell phone bill. Basically, any organization that you're going to be spending a ton of money with, know how much your value to them is over your lifetime, and use that as a bargaining chip. Love doing this for banks. With a bank, your lifetime value is generally going to be north of $250,000, particularly if you're like buying a house and financing it through the bank. So you are super valuable to organizations like banks and telecoms, and use that to your advantage, and kind of have a grain of salt when you see something being offered for free. 2 movie tickets worth $24 to get $50,000 worth of your cash over a lifetime is a pretty small price to pay, and don't hesitate to use that to your advantage when you're negotiating. Okay. So next up, and kind of along the same lines, don't be afraid to negotiate. I think we get used to just accepting what's given to us when it comes to negotiation. It's easy to purchase something with one click. As Michael Scott said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky. Okay, so don't be afraid to negotiate when you are either like signing an agreement or making a purchase. So remember kind of your customer lifetime value, or the lifetime value of a customer, and use it as a bargaining position. So some sample questions we can ask here. If you're signing up for a credit card, or you're signing up for like cable internet, always ask, can I have whatever the fee is? Maybe it's an activation fee, a monthly fee, an annual fee. Ask if you can have that waived. Indicate that if you're not going to have it waived, then maybe you'll try someone else. Always be willing to kind of walk away in a negotiation. Seek out actively if there's a low fee deal available to your student, and be sure to ask. With banks, looking for kind of student plans that they have in place. And in some instances, if you maintain a minimum balance, so you keep $500 in your bank account, they will offer to remove all of your fees or waive your fees. And at least once a year for folks you're spending a lot of money with, simply ask, is there a better plan for me right now? I'd like to be switched over to it. So on an annual basis, kind of making an ask of whether you're getting the best deal or not. And if you're shopping around, you can always use one company's offer as leverage and ask the company that you're currently with to beat it, or indicate that you'll potentially switch service providers, because your lifetime value, your customer lifetime value is big to them, and they'll usually be willing to offer some type of incentive for you to kick around, because it's more expensive for them to find a new customer than it is to keep you. Okay. A couple other budgeting tips for saving us some money. Just know your latte factor. One of the easiest ways to spend and burn through a ton of cash is eating out. So kind of know your latte factor, and how much you're spending kind of on a monthly basis on eating out. And particularly if you're me and you're drinking a ton of coffee, those expenses can add up. So always good to look for ways, understand what we're spending, and making plans so that we're not spending as much money outside of what's available to us at home. So adopt a BYOS strategy. So bringing your own snacks when you're not loaded up at dining hall, trying to make bulk purchases at a supermarket with buddies, so that you can kind of split, like buy in bulk, achieve some savings, and split some of the savings there. Never shop hungry. Okay, you're way more likely to spend a little bit more. And just try to set a weekly entertainment budget or a weekly restaurant or food budget if you find that you are eating out a lot. putting a goal in place to spend under a certain amount has a powerful incentive for reducing the amount of money that you're going to spend. A couple other quick tips for saving money, kind of more broadly. More and more, we're seeing the ability to buy things with one click. I'm going to pick on Amazon a little bit here. Disable one-click buying, so there's a few stage gates you have to go through before you're making a purchase. When you can just click a button once, it's easy to make kind of frivolous purchases, like the Hamburglar costume I bought online on Amazon a couple of years ago, as an example. So disable that one-click buying with Amazon and any other providers you're using. So you have to be a bit more thoughtful about your purchases. If you are making a bigger purchase, always a good idea to sleep on it. Take a few days, and kind of the bigger the purchase is, the more time you want to take to kind of research your options and be thoughtful about which particular purchase you're making. And something I increasingly recommend is to do a quarterly online subscription review and cleanse. It's super easy to sign up for the latest streaming service or any type of kind of software as a service app. So on a regular basis, we just want to go through, like, have a peek at our phone, have a peek at our desktop, have a peek at our bank statement. Who are we giving recurring fees to, and are we using that service? And if the answer is no, we haven't used it in the last couple of months, quit. Drop that service. And at a minimum, you'll probably be offered an incentive to kick around. And more likely than not, you'll leave it and you'll have extra money in your pocket, and it'll be great. Okay. Another couple of quick budgeting tips before we jump into the credit card realm. Encouraging you right now, even if it's a tiny bit of money, to practice saving through either a tax-free savings account, TFSA, or a registered retirement savings plan, an RRSP. Even if you're putting away, so you've set up this tax-free savings account, I can talk more about that in the question period if you're interested. Saving like $10 a month now, investing $10 a month now, through the power of compound interest. The earlier you start to save, kind of like a snowball, the quicker your savings accumulate and the bigger the impact it's going to have down the line. So even if we are currently kind of racking up a bit of debt to attend school, just getting in that habit of saving and squirreling away some funds is a really good habit to get into. And be sure to ask around with service providers what options they have for you with respect to any COVID related savings. So like a reduction of your rates or a flexible payment option. The last thing you want to do is miss payments and have that impact your credit rating, which I'll talk about in a minute. So if you ever find yourself, your back's up against the wall in terms of being able to afford bills, reach out actively to anyone from kind of your landlord to a service provider or utility, and just ask them what their flexible payment options are. That can save you a ton of headaches in terms of your cash flow and your credit rating down the line. Okay. Boom. So a couple questions you can kind of ask yourself on a regular basis, just so you understand how you tick and you're making smarter financial decisions. What do you actually need? So what is a want versus a need? And understanding kind of when you're making maybe frivolous purchases. So understanding how susceptible you are to like advertising or kind of the jostling of your friends or styles. As an accounting professor, I don't really have to worry that much about trending styles. Accountants aren't known for their fashion sense. Know what's sort of pushing you over the edge to make purchases, and then just being aware of that means that you'll be less likely rather to act on maybe impulsive purchases. That idea of kind of sleeping on something for a day before making a big purchase is super key. And consider what you've bought previously as a need and what's now kind of collecting dust a lot around the house. So just understand kind of your purchasing patterns and your impulses, and you'll be better able to manage them. Again, encouraging, if you have questions, feel free to pop them into the live event Q&A there. I'm just scrolling down here, seeing a few. Boom. I love it. So yeah, we got the advice there. Just call your cell phone company and tell them you're going to quit, and they'll knock money off your bill. Absolutely. Like everything's a negotiation. Okay. Boom. So going to jump into credit and credit cards and credit scores now, and keep the train rolling. I will be monitoring questions there. Feel free to fire away. Okay. So what is credit? It's basically like the confidence in a purchaser's ability and intention to pay. Essentially, it's an IOU that's extended to us by like a company or an organization where they're going to give us goods or services, and we promise to pay it back later, often with a charge associated with it. Okay, so that's what credit is. We're kind of giving you an IOU basically as a company. You're going to pay us back, and you're probably going to pay us a small fee in order to borrow that money and not have to pay it back right away. Okay, so you may hear of something called the credit score. This is basically a 3-digit number from something called a credit report that shows how well you're managing credit and how risky it would be for a company to lend you money. So your credit report is going to be based on a number of your credit score, rather, based on a number of key factors. You can kind of think of it a little bit like your browser history, except from a financial perspective. So there's information kind of floating out that's available to people who are going to be lending you money. When you give them permission to look at it, they're going to be looking at how long you've had credit extended to you. So have you had a credit card for a long time? Do you have good history of like paying your bills off on time? Are you regularly like racking up kind of big bills and then not paying them off? Are you up near your credit limit, which I'll talk about in a minute? Are you applying for like 50 different sources of credit? So do you have 5 credit cards and like a student loan, and you just bought a used car through a car dealership? So you're being extended credit in all these different ways. The more credit you have, kind of generally speaking, the lower your credit score is going to be. If you're using like payday loan agencies, things that are maybe a riskier form of receiving credit, those are all things that are going to impact on your credit score, and basically mean that you're going to be able to borrow less money, and the money that you do borrow is going to be more expensive. Okay. Okay. So see a question there about TFSAs and RRSPs. Happy to chat further about that, and the survey will be coming out a little bit later on this week, or actually for Intro to Accounting, you should have received that already. If you want to send me a note via email, I'll follow up with you directly on that. So credit cards, I love this. Treat a credit card like a little plastic grenade. It's a powerful tool, but it must be handled very carefully. Okay. So some basics here. You've got a credit card, generally offered by a bank or another financial institution, and they're offering to kind of lend you money on a short-term basis in exchange for paying a fee. So allowing you to kind of purchase things you can't afford right now over a longer period of time, and charging you money to do that. So when you're applying for a credit card, you'll be given what's called a credit limit. That's the maximum amount you can borrow against a credit card. For someone who has no credit history or no real established credit score, your credit limit's going to be pretty low starting off with, generally as low as $500, up to about $2,000 would be what you'd get started with on a credit card. You'll pay interest on a monthly basis if you don't pay back what you've charged to that credit card. And something you want to have a look at is what we call the APR, or the annual percentage rate. That is the percentage rate of interest that you're going to pay on a purchase until you've paid off kind of the balance on your credit card. So usually for every dollar worth of credit that you borrow on your credit card, you're paying about 20% or 20 cents for every dollar that you borrowed per year. Okay. And super important as well, if you're using your credit card, you'll have what's called a minimum payment, which is usually 2 to 5% of what your credit limit is, based on kind of what you're spending throughout the time you own the credit card. You're required to make at a minimum a payment each month in order to make sure that you're not damaging your credit rating, and that you're gradually kind of eating away at the balance that you have outstanding. So I'll give you a quick example of how a credit card works. This is amazing. So this is the Kluvens IWSK Scorpion computer gaming cockpit, just theoretical purchase. If anyone's looking for a great Christmas gift for me, I think this would be super fun. Works great in a dorm room. Let's say I want to buy this for my new room in Eden House. It's $2,500. I get a credit card and I buy this amazing Scorpion desk. Okay. So I buy that with my credit card. It's $2,500. I have a minimum monthly payment on that purchase of $50, and my annual percentage rate, or basically the interest rate that I'm paying on that money that I borrowed, is 18%. So I decide just to make my monthly payment. It's $50. Of that $50, 38 of those dollars are going directly just to paying off interest, and only $12 from that minimum monthly payment is going to pay off like the balance owed. So after 1 month, I've got this sweet Scorpion desk. I've paid $50. I've made my minimum monthly payment. I've paid $50 towards it, but I still owe, after 1 month, $2,488. So most of the money that I paid towards that minimum monthly payment has gone towards covering off interest against it. Okay. So if I want to extrapolate this out a little bit, I've still got this sweet Scorpion desk, although maybe it's aged not particularly well. I'm making only my minimum payment of $50 a month. It would take 334 months or 28 years to actually pay off this chair, because I'm spending so much time just paying down that interest, and not much is going towards the principal or like the balance that I actually owe on that chair every month. So when all is said and done, it's 28 years down the road. I've still got a sweet gaming chair. I don't know what shape it's in after 28 years, but it's actually cost me close to $8,400 in out-of-pocket costs because of all that interest that's been mounting on it. Okay. So great question here. Is it worth having a credit card if I never spend more money in a month than I earn or have in checking? It's okay to have a credit card. It's good to have a credit card as long as you're paying off the full balance on a regular basis. You don't want to be carrying a balance, because otherwise you're going to get stung by interest charges. So you never want to carry a balance on that credit card. By having a credit card with a small credit limit and paying it off regularly, it helps you to build your credit score, and that'll help you access more funds in the future. So you always want to make sure that you're making more than the minimum monthly payment charges, and ideally not buying anything unless you can afford to pay off the full balance, because otherwise you get stuck with unnecessary interest expenses. Okay. Boom. So a bunch of tips here. At a minimum, we basically just don't want to be using the credit card as anything other than a way to potentially rack up a few credit card points and incentives. We always want to pay off our balance at the end of every month. We don't want to treat this like a bank account, or it can result in financial ruin and a ton of problems. So if you're going to have a credit card, always make sure you pay off your balance every month. If you're not able to do that, always make at least the minimum monthly payment. If you don't make the minimum monthly payment, it starts to have a negative impact on your credit score, and that can cause you all kinds of problems down the line. And super important that that you're not using your credit card and the cash advance option on it for emergency purchases. So things that are not emergency purchase are like buying rounds of drinks for all your friends, like an autographed kind of Tiger King picture, or a super expensive pair of shoes. They're not emergencies. Like, we don't want to be relying on a credit card for those things. Saving up for them, totally fine, but they are not emergency purchases. Okay. You generally want to stay under 30% of your total credit limit, particularly if you're carrying a balance. The more of that you've used up, the worse the impact it has on your credit rating. And just treating it like what it is. You're paying interest and an extra fee on the money that you borrow. So making sure that you're able to pay off the amount that you owe by the due date. Caution you strongly against taking out several credit cards. So it's pretty easy to get a credit card with a small credit limit and to rack up a ton of debt really quickly. Avoid doing that at all costs, or it'll destroy your credit rating, and it'll take you years to rebuild that and cause you a lot of problems on everything from getting your power kind of hooked up to your ability to borrow money to buy a house or to purchase a vehicle. So stick to one credit card at a time. and avoid applying for credit through a ton of different sources. It's easy money, short term, and a whole heck of a lot harder to pay back once you racked up big bills. And you'll be continually offered by the bank to have your credit limit increased. So you might be starting out with $500 they have available to you. Banks will regularly, and credit card providers will regularly invite you to bump that back up. Avoid that unless you need it, which you rarely do. So you can refuse a credit limit increase, and that'll help you maintain a stronger credit score. Okay. Something you can do to save your butt, just set up an auto payment for at least the minimum payment amount each month. You can take it right out of your bank account in a recurring auto payment of whatever the minimum charge is, usually 2 to 5% of your credit limit. Just set that up so it automatically comes into your bank account, and you're not going to get dinged on your credit report, your credit score, by forgetting a payment by accident. And if you're going to get a credit card, using the rewards ones, you're racking up some additional incentives. Lots of good resources on how to choose the best credit card for you. Only use it for needs and not wants. Okay. Can't stress this enough. Avoid payday loans or kind of payday lenders. These are the shops you'll see around town that are willing to offer you like a $200 loan where you can get access to cash quickly. The APR, or the interest rate on getting money through like a payday loan, is often north of 400 and sometimes north of 1,000%. So if you were to borrow like $300, your APR rate on that to borrow that money for 14 days, based on a rate of about 400. To borrow $300, you're gonna have to pay $63 in interest. Avoid payday loans like the plague. They're super predatory and gonna put you in a whole world of hurt and hurt your credit rating. Okay, couple warning signs. So you're using your credit card out of necessity because you don't have the money in your bank account to pay for things. Okay, if you're regularly using cash advances from your credit card, either for buying groceries or for kind of if you're out of the bar buying drinks, if you're using cash advances for that, bad news bears, huge warning sign. And you're going to want to talk to somebody and get some counseling about how you manage your way out of those habits. If you bought a Tesla on your credit card and don't have plans to pay for it yet, that's a warning sign. And if you're frequently missing payments or due dates, a big warning sign that you want to chat with someone to get your finances in order. And if you find that you're regularly bumping up against the credit limit that you have set for you, big red flag. Okay, so be careful and monitor these things. You can get yourself into a whole lot of trouble. Okay, so that was kind of the dark side of the presentation. Again, feel free to fire away on questions here. Here's some tips. Here's some ways that we can make some money to offset some of those challenges. So Acadia offers over $4 million in scholarships and financial aid. When you apply for Acadia, you're automatically considered for any internal scholarships that we have. And so it's an automated process. We don't need to worry about a ton of follow-up on it. I will say that the applications for bursaries kind of are now due. You should have received an email about that. And if you haven't, you're going to want to email financial aid. It's a short application for that. And our goal is to not let financial barriers be a limit to who's attending Acadia University. So we're lucky to have lots of resources available, but there is an application process around that. You can read more about that at scholarships.acadiau.ca. Okay. So internally, we've got about $4 million worth of resources available. There are a ton of external resources that are available to us that can go a long way. Encouraging you to look at external sites. Take again, kind of an hour a week for the next couple of weeks, and make a regular habit of checking what's out there. There are hundreds of millions of dollars available annually in scholarships across Canada to kind of local and international students, students from marginalized groups. Hundreds of millions of dollars of scholarships every year that go unclaimed. So have a look at some of these websites. Wyconic is a huge one. univcan.ca. Tons of resources out there that people often don't apply for. And so apply early, apply often. And even if you're only meeting some of the criteria for the scholarships, encouraging you to apply for them anyway. You don't need to often have like a perfect application where you're meeting all the criteria. I encourage you to use like the Michael Scott rule on this and know that you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So apply for everything that you can. Okay. Another great way to kind of bring in some resources, help those cash inflows, is to look at working while you're on campus. So it's an awesome way to meet people. You can make a few bucks on the side, and particularly for eyeing beyond Acadia, which many of you probably aren't thinking that much about right now, it's a great way to bolster your resume. So while I was at Acadia 200 years ago, I was a bouncer at the Axe, our student pub, which is kind of hilarious because I weighed like 140 pounds when I was at Acadia, and wouldn't have been much help on that front. But met incredible people that I still stay in touch with to this day. I worked with the student union, and I worked as a teaching assistant as well. So tons of jobs on campus. I would encourage you to keep an eye out for the Acadia Students Union, or the ASU. They operate a number of businesses on campus, and are always posting for roles with kind of clubs and some of their businesses. So check them out. Acadia University as a whole, lots of roles, particularly as you get further on into your degree, to do some research or to be a teaching assistant. Chartwell's, the on-campus food provider, does a lot of stuff, has a lot of student employment opportunities as well. And obviously local businesses, anything you see on Main Street there, or in the agriculture sector, encouraging you to keep tabs on student employment opportunities there. And we've got a great co-op program here, depending on what program you're enrolled in Acadia. That's a good way to get experience and showcase that you are prepped for what's to come, and to get some practical experience along the way. Yep. And I will share the this presentation, and we'll make it available after the fact as well. Feel free to email me or at michael.kennedy@acadiau.ca if you have specific questions too. Okay. Boom. Something you also might want to do, and seeing more and more students do this, is just actually creating your own job. So consider starting a side hustle, or making your own business while you're at Acadia. There's a number of on-campus supports, so encouraging you to check out the Acadia Entrepreneurship Center. Lots of ways you can kind of make a few bucks on the side through starting your own business and providing a service or a product to students on campus, particularly for international students. I highly recommend this. Lots of different ways that you can potentially generate income through, like, bringing your culture or things that are like kind of unique from kind of your place of origin to Canada, and potentially generate a little bit of extra income there. Lots of resources available at acadiaentrepreneurshipcenter.ca. Okay. If you haven't been paying attention to it, happy again chat about this in further detail. There's been lots of student-specific government programs that have been made available amid COVID to offset financial pressures. So there is a monthly stipend paid out throughout the summer if you were unable to find work, called the CESB, and a number of changes to Canada student loans where it's easier to gain eligibility. So encouraging you to check those out. If you think you may be eligible, and happy to chat more about that. Okay, couple more quick hits before we wrap up here. I'll have a few minutes for questions. When it comes to taxes, not a ton we need to worry about at this stage in the game, but a few things you may want to consider. The biggest one, with my accountant hat on, is that you get a tuition tax credit, or you can claim tax credits on the amount that you spent on your tuition. Okay, and it's possible for you to share them with your spouse, with a parent, or with a grandparent. And so whoever, so you'll have this tax credit for your tuition. You want the person kind of in your family who's going to get the biggest amount of refund from that tax credit to claim it. So other members of your family can claim that tax credit, and it'll result in more cash kind of flowing into kind of your family's bank account. So when I was a poor student, kind of like working to pay my way through university, my income was low enough that it made more sense for my one of my parents to claim my tuition credits. They claimed it through their tax returns, and then gave me kind of the net amount of money that they saved. So encouraging you to explore options on that. Just note that you're not paying tax on scholarships, bursaries, or grants. So that's a nice thing, not to be taxed on income that you're earning from those. And eventually you're going to be able to claim a tax credit, so reduce the amount of taxes that you're paying by claiming any loan interest that you're paying on your student loans. Okay. Couple other neat resources here that will pop up that are available online. My favorite podcast of all time, if you're interested in investing, This is a great podcast called Freakonomics. I'll just paste the link here in the chat bar. It's a 2-part series. Talks about kind of the basics of investing and what strategies over the long term have been kind of the most successful in terms of building wealth. And another great resource is from the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada, or CPA Canada, a financial wellness guide. I just popped the link up in the chat. There are tons of resources about financial wellness and financial literacy available online, so I encourage you to check those out and stand on top of this stuff. The earlier you think about it and kind of build it into how you're living your life, the more successful you'll be, and the more financially stable you'll be as you go through. Okay, so just before I move on to questions, key takeaways. Please create a budget and monitor it on a minimum monthly basis. Lots of tools available online for you to help you build that budget and to monitor it. Put a calendar reminder in and do that on a monthly basis. Get into a habit, and it's one that'll serve you well for life. Never carry a balance on your credit card. But if you must, make the minimum monthly payment. Kind of, again, treating a credit card like a grenade and not using it unless you have to, or if you're using it in a responsible way. Lots of on-campus resources available. Definitely encourage you to work while you're at Acadia on a part-time basis, and consider starting a side hustle. I'd love to jam on ideas about how you can do that. Feel free to email me anytime. And then big picture, if you have questions, if you're ever at a point from a financial perspective that you're feeling like you're on the bubble, contact the gang at Financial Aid. Incredible team there who care deeply about you and have a lot of resources and are going to do everything they can to make sure that finance is not a barrier to you obtaining an awesome education. Okay, that's all I got. Feel free to ask away questions in the chat function there. Reach out anytime. So pumped to have you with us at Acadia, whether you're on campus or studying from afar, and looking forward to a great semester ahead. Okay, awesome question there. So I'm a Quebec student going to university in Nova Scotia. Does this affect claiming my tuition expenses as a tax credit? There are particular kind of individual rules. I won't get into like the extreme depths of tax right now, but essentially you're paying taxes both provincially and federally. So you should be able to claim a federal portion of that tax on your tax return. If you send me a note, michael.kennedy@acadiau.ca, happy to kind of provide you a more specific answer than that. So, yeah. Okay, any other questions there? Encouraging you to check out the workout there with Coach Duffy in a few minutes. Get limber and get strong in your room. Great guy, incredible coach, incredible human being that hopefully you'll get the chance to know a little bit for your time at Acadia. Just an inspiration, and has done some amazing things with the basketball squad at Acadia and far beyond. It's got some awesome workout tips and some sweet kind of dad dance moves. Apps I recommend for budgeting, great question. There's a simple one called Mint that's fairly well used. I typically build my own kind of spreadsheets, and even the built-in software that you've got kind of on your through your whatever bank you're using is typically pretty good. Yeah. A lot of the apps too, like it's that trade-off between kind of they're getting all of your information, they're making their money by virtue of kind of pooling the data from a number of different customers, and then using that to kind of sell it in aggregate to third parties. So they're kind of using your information to generate advertising revenue. Along with that, because they're looking at kind of specific detailed info. Sometimes they'll offer up like special deals that could reduce the rates that you're paying. So there are some advantages to using some of those apps as long as you're comfortable with the data that you're providing in kind of like a pay-to-play model. Okay. Don't see any other questions there. Again, feel free to reach out anytime. I'll pop my, I am michael.kennedy@acadiau.ca. Email address is in the chat box there. I'm on Instagram. Just pop that in the chat box as well. Please feel free to reach out. Awesome to welcome you into the Acadia family, and have a great semester and just an amazing Acadia journey.